Welcome back to the Indie Fantasy Club. If you're a self-published author, or you've thought about becoming one, you've probably wondered, how much does indie publishing actually cost? Today we're breaking it all down. From writing tools to editing to marketing strategies, all so you can plan your publishing journey without any surprises. Now keep in mind, this video is geared more towards debut fantasy authors. These prices will likely go down over time as you build an audience and as you gain more experience and see what works for you. But as is with most investments, the upfront costs are often the heaviest. But that doesn't mean that indie publishing has to be expensive. In fact, there are plenty of cost-effective solutions that won't break the bank for many of us poor, struggling authors out there. So I'm going to break these costs into an affordable category as well as the more expensive options out there. So with that context in mind, let's dive into some financial planning. First up, let's talk about the actual writing process, shall we? If you want to write your book for free, you can do that. And I would recommend using something like Google Docs. You can create headers for your chapters so it's easy to navigate, and it auto saves your work, so you never really have to worry about losing any of your words. Now, I guess you can count the cost of internet, because you will need internet to be able to access this cloud-based system, but for the sake of this video, we're just gonna assume that you have access to the internet, and we're gonna say that that's a no cost. If you want a little more robust writing tool, then you can get yourself something like Microsoft Word. This is only $10 a month, which isn't bad, and offers a lot more formatting options when you get closer to the publishing stage. And the nice thing about Word is that you can either use it as the cloud internet-based system, or you can use the downloaded version. But if you do use the downloaded version, obviously save your work often. Now, if you are a plotter and like to have all of your ideas and plans organized, then you're probably going to need some type of online tool for that. A free option would be the Reedsy Studio. This allows you to create boards to map out your storyline, add cards to visualize your characters and scenes, record character attributes so they don't suddenly switch from having brown eyes to having blue or brown hair to blonde, etc., etc. Now, the free version is pretty limited, obviously, but you can make it work if you're on a budget. Now, if you want to step up your outlining and organization, then Scrivener seems to be the preferred tool for a lot of authors. There might be a little bit steeper of a learning curve, but it has pretty robust features. This is going to cost you $60 though, but it's a one-time fee for the download. So in my opinion, that's actually not too bad. For brainstorming and support to escape the dreaded writer's block, you can use tools like One Stop for Writers. This has a great thesaurus designed specifically for authors, as well as a wide range of tools to help you on your writing journey. For $11 a month, I'd say that's not a bad deal. And by the way, none of these companies are sponsoring me to say any of these things, so this is just based off of my own research. I could be wrong, but I'm just presenting it as I find it. So that means just the writing process alone can range anywhere from completely free to $252 a year. This mostly just depends on your writing needs and preferences, so don't be afraid to try things out that will make your life easier as an author. Sometimes it's better to just spend a little bit of money so that you can save some time and effort in the long run. Time to move on to phase 2. Editing. Now for this section, we're just going to assume that you've written a 150,000 word book. So these costs are usually heavily dependent upon the actual ending word count of your novel. But this should at least give you a general idea of what to expect. If you're looking for a more affordable editing tool that you can just use yourself rather than hiring someone, then you can use tools like Grammarly or the Hemingway Editor. Grammarly will mostly just check for spelling and punctuation and grammar, while the Hemingway Editor goes a little bit further and provides information regarding the reading difficulty and different content recommendations. And for only $10 a month, this can serve as a pretty good proofreader. However, if you do have concerns about AI with your work, I did notice that they do have AI features as part of their platform. So if that's a make or break for you, I don't know enough about it to know how this AI is used with either of these tools, if it's extracting information from your work like a ChatGPT would, but you'd have to do a little bit more research into that to see if that's something that you're comfortable with. But something to be aware of. The other downside is that these tools won't really be able to check for things like if your character's name is spelled wrong, or if a word is spelled correctly but it has a different meaning. Like if your main character is a he, but you accidentally refer to them as a she. Those types of things won't get caught by these editors most of the time. Another option would be something like Pro Writing Aid. This is about the same cost as other tools, but they charge the $120 a year rather than offering a reasonable monthly option. Like the cost basically triples if you do monthly instead of annual, which is insane. But this does have quite a few more features like passive voice detection, powerful word tools, author comparison, and sensory reports. So if you have the money up front, this might be the best tool. Okay, so those were the affordable options. So now we can talk to all of you indie authors out there who are absolutely loaded with cash, since that includes so many of us. We're going to talk about hiring actual people, editors, to work on your novel. And there are 3 types of editors that you can hire to review your book. The first is a developmental editor, which will help you with the overall story structure, character development, and any pacing issues you might be having. This is a very high-level review, but it can help you improve the pacing or ensure satisfying conclusions to your story. Basically, if you've given your book out to like beta readers and they've expressed that there are issues with the pacing or with the ending, but they can't articulate what they would do different, a developmental editor would be able to come in and actually articulate those problems for you to fix. Now, these folks are expensive, charging anywhere from 3 cents to 7 cents a word, which ends up being a grand total, are you sitting down, of $4,500 to $10,500. That hurts me to even say those words out loud. Ooh! So unless your book is getting pretty consistent negative feedback from beta readers, I definitely say that this is way more of a luxury service. Like, I would have to really love my story to shell out that kind of cash to make my story work. The next option would be a copy editor. These people focus more on the actual structure of your story, fixing issues with grammar, style, and tone consistency, and proper formatting. They're not going to give you any ideas for your book, but they'll make sure the words on the page are as professional and clean as possible. These folks are a little bit cheaper, but it's still pretty expensive at anywhere from 2 cents to 3 cents a word, or $3,000 to $4,500. If you do have a budget for editing, this is definitely the route that I would take. You can find people on Reedsy, Fiverr, or Upwork, or of course from referrals or people that you may know within your network. And on these platforms, a lot of times you can send them a chapter and they'll edit it for free so that you can get a better idea of what to expect from them, which is pretty cool. And the final option for editing services would be a proofreader. Unlike copy editing, this is a super high level edit to check for typos and punctuation mistakes. And honestly, I feel like this one is the most overrated of the 3, especially with softwares out there like Grammarly or Hemingway Editor. I don't know. To me, it just seems like a really expensive service that you can get way cheaper somewhere else. Like, I understand a person can catch things that certain softwares won't, but it's a very expensive service to check for any final small errors that there might be. And these costs can range anywhere from 1 cent to 3 cents a word, or $1,500 to $4,500. Again, I think your money would be best spent on a copy editor out of these 3 options. But hey, if you're a millionaire and writing is just a fun little hobby for you, go nuts. Hire all 3 if you want. So, for the budget folks out there, you're looking at about $120 a year. And for all of our millionaire indie friends, you could spend as much as $19,500. I mean, not really. Realistically, you would spend a max of $5,000 if you were going to pick one of those 3. I don't think you need all 3. So I think the $19,000 is a little extreme, but we're going to do a little shock and awe with the affordable versus expensive packages. So we're keeping the $19,000 on there. Now that your book is a finished masterpiece, it's time to publish that bad boy or girl. Let's start with the cover art. If you plan to do this yourself, which I don't recommend unless you're a graphic designer or something, but if you insist, then you can find some pretty generic artwork and formatting options on places like Canva. But if you insist on being cheap with your cover art, the least you can do is buy the pro version, which is only $10 a month, okay? And for those that actually want an attractive book cover that will get people to pick up your book, then you need to hire a professional. Depending on the experience of your artist, this can range anywhere from $200 to $1,000. But the nice thing about this is when you're hiring a professional, you can see their portfolio to get an idea of all the past projects that they've worked on to see if they would be a good fit for your book. And again, you can find designers on Upwork, Reedsy, or Fiverr. Or if there are other indie artists where you liked their cover, usually they'll have an attribution in the front cover of their books, and you can try and contact them that way. On the same note as cover art, let's talk about fantasy maps. Now, this isn't going to be necessary for every author, but I just want to throw out some options for those that have epic worlds or lots of traveling. For this, I do think there are enough tools out there that you could do this yourself, and it would still look pretty good. Incarnate is a really good tool, and it's only $5 a month, which really isn't bad, especially if you can get it designed in a couple of months, then you're really not paying for a full year. And on the more pricier side, you could get Wonderdraft, which is $30, but it's a download that you get to keep, so it's probably more of a cost-effective purchase in the long run if you're going to be spending a lot of time developing your map. And I would have a rough idea, like maybe a sketch of what you want your map to look like, so you're not starting from scratch, so that you can have a reference as you're building it out on these softwares. Next up, let's talk about ISBNs. This is basically a code that is used worldwide by publishers, booksellers, libraries, and retailers to facilitate ordering, listing, sales record, and stock control. If you decide to publish with the Amazon KDP Publishing, this is going to be free. However, there are drawbacks to this, such as limited distribution through any outside channels besides Amazon. So the free ISBN essentially becomes golden handcuffs if you ever want to expand your distribution methods to more traditional stores. So if you want more freedom with your books, you're going to have to purchase an ISBN. At Boker Publishing Services, you can purchase a single ISBN for $125, or you can buy 10 for $295. So if you're writing a book series, you might as well buy them in bulk and save some money in the long run. And finally, you need to make sure that your book is formatted correctly for physical and ebook copies. Amazon has a really in-depth tutorial and guide if you want to do this yourself using Word, but I'd recommend using something like Scrivener so that you don't hate your life. And if you've already purchased it during the writing stage, then this is going to be a nice little added free bonus to this section. Otherwise, this is going to cost you $60. So that's not terrible. Now, if you just don't want to deal with the headache of formatting your novel, I get it. But that means you're going to have to hire a professional to do it. And this will usually cost somewhere around the $750 range on average. But you can basically send them your messy manuscript. They'll clean it up for all the file formats that you're going to need for publishing. All right, so if you're going the affordable route, publishing should run less than $240 a year. And on the expensive side of things, you're looking at a little over $2,000 to do your publishing. You've published your book. Congratulations, you're done. There are no more costs. Did you really believe that? Shame on you. You should have watched my marketing video. You should know there's more to do. So now that your book is published, it's time to get the word out. And I have some bad news. That's not going to be cheap. If you haven't watched my book marketing video, I'd suggest you check it out. It basically outlines all the marketing opportunities you can take advantage of as an indie author. But let's just run through some of these costs. I'm going to break this down into 4 quick, easy categories, which is website, paid advertising, ARCs, and awards. Now, having a website isn't necessarily a requirement, but it does provide a good foundation for other marketing initiatives. Plus, when you become big and famous, and people start Googling your name and your books, it's nice to have at least some modicum of control over that information. So, to create a website, you first need to buy a domain. Usually, authors will just do their first and last name if it's available, and if it's not a super competitive domain, it'll probably cost you about $15 per year from providers like GoDaddy or Bluehost. Then you actually have to pay for the hosting of that domain, which is going to be another about $13 a month from most of these hosting providers. Once you have the domain and the hosting in place, now you can actually build your website. Now, there are 3 common and pretty user-friendly website builders that you can take advantage of. The first one is Squarespace. That one is going to cost you anywhere from $25 to $56 a month. The next one is Wix, and that will cost anywhere from $17 to $36 a month. And finally, you have WordPress, which is anywhere from $4 to $25 a month. Now, WordPress is my preference, but that's just because I have a ton of experience building websites in WordPress. And if you do choose to go this route, the easiest website builder for WordPress is the Divi theme. And that's going to cost you either $89 a year, or you can just pay a one-time fee of $250 and you can have it for life. That's one I'd recommend if you plan to have your website forever, which you probably will. Then that's the route that I would go. Now, if you want to spend the time learning the software and building out something really simple, it's only going to cost you a little bit of time. But if you don't want to go through all of that hassle, then you can also just hire someone else to build it for you. This will cost you anywhere from $500 to $1,500. And anything more than that, I promise you, they're just trying to rip you off. I used to work for a marketing agency. It takes a week to build a simple website. A week, especially if you're providing the content for it. So if you're getting a website quote for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, find someone else. They are full of it. Next up is paid advertising. The first type of paid advertising you can do is on social media. If I were you, I'd advertise on your most popular existing platforms if you already have those set up. So if you're already posting on Instagram, boost some of your high performing posts. If you have a YouTube channel, run a content promotion campaign. If you have multiple platforms, test each platform with $50 to see which one performs best. And the second type of paid advertising is Amazon ads, especially if that's where you end up self-publishing. Now, there's probably going to be a little bit more of a learning curve with this one, but just experiment with different things. See if you can figure it out. See if you can get the hang of it and get your book promoted. Now, for the entire paid advertising category, I'd set aside a budget of anywhere from $500 to $1,500 a month. To me, this is non-negotiable. Again, you're going to be spending a lot of money up front with the goal of building an audience so that it spreads through word of mouth over time. And you'll really want to advertise heavily for the first 3 or 4 months after publishing. After that, you can probably ease up on ads and maybe spend anywhere from $100 to $500 a month for basically the rest of the year. And that would bring the total paid advertising budget anywhere from $2,400 a year to $9,000 a year. This is a must for all indie authors to compete, especially against traditionally published authors. Now let's talk about advanced reader copies, or ARCs. These are the books you're giving away to influencers for reviews and to spread awareness through existing audiences. If I have 500 subscribers and you send me a book, you basically get to tell 500 people about your story through me. If you can land a big booktuber like Daniel Green or Murphy Napier with hundreds of thousands of subscribers, even better. Now, for each influencer that you send a book to, you're basically paying for the book, the shipping, and maybe some swag. Now, the book for author pricing, depending on how big the book is going to be about $10. Domestic USPS shipping will cost anywhere from $11 to $20, depending on the box size and weight. For international shipping, you could be looking at anywhere from $17 to $100. And if you want to add any swag to the box, you might spend some money on stickers or keychains or bookmarks, just something a little extra to differentiate yourself. And that brings your total anywhere from $50 to $150 per influencer. Now, the more influencers that you reach out to, the more likely you are to get your name out there. So I'd start with 10 as a baseline and kind of work your way up from there. Remember, it's going to be easier to access people with less subscribers, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try for the bigger booktubers. You just never know. Sometimes it's worth the risk. So with that baseline of 10 ARC copies, you're looking at a cost of anywhere from $500 to $1,500. And finally, let's talk about indie award submissions. The SPFBO is one of the most well-known indie fantasy competitions, but that's also what makes it more competitive. That and the fact that it's free make it pretty tough to get in the top 10. This award only accepts 300 submissions, and I think for 2024 they got something like 500. So yeah, pretty intense for this one. But the good news is there are other awards out there. The bad news is it's gonna cost you. The Next Gen Indie Book Awards is $80 per submission. The Best Indie Book Award is $75 per submission. The National Indie Excellence Awards is $75. The Indie Reader Discovery Award is $230. The Independent Publisher Book Awards is $100. And the IBPA Benjamin Franklin Award is $234. So if you applied to each one of these awards, that would be a grand total of $794. I mean, that's not too bad, but it's also kind of a gamble because you don't know if your book is going to win. So I don't know, sometimes you gotta risk it to get the biscuit. And I'm sure that there are other awards out there, but these are just a few of the ones that I found that you could look into. And those are all the indie publishing costs that you'll need to consider as an indie fantasy author. So let's recap. In the writing portion, you're looking at $0 on the cheap side of things and $252 on the expensive end. For editing costs, you're probably going to need to spend anywhere from $120 on the affordable end and $19,500 if you're already a millionaire. Realistically, that one's going to be like $5,000 on the expensive end, but you know what I mean. The publishing expenses will range from $240 to $2,075. And finally, the marketing costs will be anywhere from $3,044 to $12,965. And honestly, the reason the marketing bucket is the most expensive is because you have to do marketing. Like, if you want to be realistic about being discovered as an indie author, you have to invest something into it. Obviously, every person and situation is unique, so do what works best for you. But hopefully this will at least give you a better idea of what to expect as you're preparing to publish your indie fantasy story. What did you think? Did I miss anything? If you're an indie author, let me know if I'm missing any costs out there. I know I'm probably just scraping the surface of all the tiny little odds and ends purchases that really can add up over time, but I do think I got most of the big ones. If not, let me know in the comments. And that'll do it for today's video. If you haven't already, be sure to like this video and join the Indie Fantasy Club. We always want this indie fantasy community to grow so we can eventually compete with trad. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.